Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cambro Conversations. Today's conversation, I'm delighted to be joined by Marco Robinson. Marco, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Excited to have you. And you and I have met just the one time in person before when it was part of the conversation at Slater Menswear and Samaritan's combination put together to talk about being inside men's minds. And I feel like I know you better than some of the people that I've met maybe hundreds of times because of the depth of the conversation that we had. And your story was such that I was so keen to have a further longer form conversation and bring it to the audience in depth, because you have experienced so many highs and so many lows, but continue to this day to be reaching ever more high highs. And we're going to get on to the headline one, which we can obviously touch on. But I guess let's start at the start, Marco. What was childhood like, and how has it shaped you to be the man that you are today?
Yeah, my childhood was, I would say, volatile. It was traumatic. It was full of, I would say, a thread of survival rather than a thread of thriving. So when I was 2, my mum left my dad. My dad was a gambling addict. And my earliest memory is when I was 1, crawling on the floor on newspapers, and I could smell cigar smoke and smelly feet. That was my earliest memory. Didn't understand what that was then, but now on reflection, I knew that he was studying the form of horse racing. That's why the newspapers are spread over the floor. And he used to bet, he used to spend all his money and my mum's money, and he ran debts up all over town. In those days, you had accounts at little shops, you know. So he ran all the debts up, and my mum had no choice. She had to leave him. She was 23, I was 2. So she went to live with a mum and a stepfather in the north of England, Manchester way. And what I didn't know, but I know now, is that she was terrified of going there because she was sexually abused since she was 4 by a stepfather. But she wasn't allowed. You didn't talk about that in those days. It was kind of like you didn't do it, you know? So I'll give you an example. When she was 12, he put his hand on her breast and said, "I didn't marry your mum for your mum, I married your mum to get to you." Now, you can imagine how terrified she was to go back to that environment, but she has no choice, right? So she's on the doorstep with me in her arms, and her stepdad said it's either me or them to my grandma. And my grandma said, "You can't stay here." So we had nowhere to go. We went to the park and we slept in the park, you know, under trees, getting shelter. We were outside for like nearly 3 days. And my mum was frantic. I don't remember that because I was too young, but she got taken in by people that saw us and said, "Right, come and stay." So we stayed at friends of friends of friends. My mum was not educated in university. She didn't have a college education or anything like that. So she was working part-time jobs, casual work where she could get it. And because of that, she moved around a lot. She was very migrant. So I was going to a lot of schools. I mean, probably went to 50 schools before I was even 11. That's what it was like. So I was always the new kid, and I never made any friends because I never stayed there that long. And I had bright ginger hair, right? Freckles, white, very small. And I used to stand out like crazy. So what I used to do is put black shoe polish in my hair to try and hide my red hair, right? Because it just got picked on like crazy, and I got bullied like crazy everywhere I went. And because what was going on at home was very traumatic, because she met my stepdad when I was about 6, 7, and he seemed like her savior, but then he turned into this guy that he was a long distance lorry driver. He was away half the week. When he came back, he physically abused her. So as a kid, I would sleep under the bed because the arguments were so loud that as a kid, loud noises would really affect me. I couldn't function that way. So I ran away from home a lot. I didn't go to school much. I was the boy at the back of the classroom looking out the window, pretending to be in films and pretending to be James Bond. That was my salvation. That's how I escaped, right? And I got bullied until the age I was 15. When I got to 15, I was in the school maybe a year, and I was surrounded by 20 boys because it was a boys' school, which I hated. And they started passing me around in a circle. I think you've seen that happen in a school before, punching you, kicking you, all that kind of thing. And it got to a stage where I literally blanked out, saw red. And the next thing I remember, I was running down the road, chasing 20 boys going, "Come on!" Because I was enraged because I had no choice. I had to fight back. I was sick of running away. And I knew in that moment, I either fought back or I ran away. So I fought back.
Was this the first time you fought back?
Yeah, it was the first time. It was the first time. I was 15. It was the first time. And after that, no one bullied me ever again. Right. So then I had this my self-esteem increased. I started liking myself for the first time in my life. I started embracing challenge. I started embracing the kind of fantasy that it was then, but it started becoming a reality where I could take charge of my own life. So at that time, my mum met the guy she's still with now after 35 years. And I knew this was the right guy. So I said to my mum, you go stay with him. I'm not going to stay with you. And I was at my stepdad's, right? Girlfriend that was like half his age, and it was very awkward. So I decided to leave. And what I did is I went around all the shops in town and I said, can I clean your floors for £1 an hour? I promise I will do a great service. I'll even do the first floor for free to show you how I can do it. So I became the cheapest commodity in town, literally. And what I would do is I would clean the floors at the very latest time at night so I could sleep in the shop because I didn't have anywhere to live.
Yeah.
And I saved up for 6 months and basically rented my own room after that. So then I learned by default to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I learned by asking for money that I could actually get it by providing a service. So that's what happened.
A baptism of fire though, Marco, because it comes from a place of, and you used the term already, survival. In order to survive, you had to do something that was beyond what almost every other child that you would have encountered across these 50 schools has ever had to go through. Of course, they would have their troubles and their problems as well, their trauma, but yours was such that there was almost no way out until you were physically old enough and capable enough to fend for yourself.
Yeah, because I knew that it was hopeless, it was futile to even believe that my mum or stepfather could actually look after me in the end. It was down to me. It was down to me to take responsibility. And it wasn't my mum's fault because she'd been through enough. Now, and she only told me of the sexual abuse when she was 73 years old, when we were making the Channel 4 TV show, because it came out in the backstory. And I was like, oh my fucking God, I can't believe what you're telling me. And she kept it secret for 50 years.
But it would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? It'd make a lot of sense of how the situation was, because turned away from the doorstep of her mother and her stepfather. Wow. I mean, there's so much when we talk, Marco, that makes me think about how did some of these negative things shape you to be in the position which is positive that you are now. And one of the ones that stands out to me is this ability at a very young age to identify that entrepreneurial spirit, which in some schools, it's the guy that's selling sweets, or it's the guy that's hustling. Yeah. But for you, it was the guy that was, how can I find a place that's warm and dry to sleep tonight? Yeah. And selling your service was obviously the kind of side hustle alongside that. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It really gets me thinking, and that ability to get yourself off the street at that point is obviously what sets you on track. But you're now a well-spoken, articulate guy. You're thoughtful. What was your education like going around all these different schools? How did you learn at all? Like what did you?
Yeah, I mean, I learned to ask for things and not expect things. So that became a law of reciprocity, is it called? Yeah. So yeah, I did all the cleaning work and the crappy work, but I knew I didn't want to continue with that. So, and I didn't want to stay in the town I was in, because it was a small town, everyone knew each other, and it was just shit, basically. So I got really good at what I did. I got a job in retail. It wasn't much money, but it was okay. But I knew I had more potential than that. So I kind of outgrew it. And a guy came and approached me and said, listen, do you want to work in timeshare and on commission only, but you're going to make loads of money? Now, I thought commission only, bit dangerous that. But I was in a position where I just hated where I was. So I decided to take the opportunity. And I went to a place called Wilmslow near Manchester in, I think it was 1989, I was 21. And I started this job on commission only, loved it, big sales team, but I was very shy. I didn't know how to communicate very well. Like you said, Colin, I wasn't a very good communicator. because I hadn't had practice doing that, you know. So I was the worst salesperson for 6 weeks, literally the worst. Hadn't sold a thing. And my boss said, Marco, if you don't sell something in the next few days, you're going to get fired. Now, I used to live 5 miles away from the office, and I used to walk home and walk to the office because I didn't know anyone, didn't have a car, didn't have any money. And my question was, when I was doing that job for 6 weeks, when I wasn't getting any money, was, why am I such a loser? Why is it happening to me? Why can't I get ahead? And, you know, I thought about going back cleaning. Maybe I'm just a cleaner. That's what went through my head, right? But when my boss said to me, you're going to get fired, it kind of brought me to a pivotal moment, because I thought, there's no way I'm going back to that shit life. So subconsciously, what I did is I changed my internal question to, how can I be successful? And I kept chanting that question literally all the time, to and from work, every time. And the next day, the top salesperson approached me in the office, never met him before. And he said, Marco, I understand what you're going through. I used to be homeless. I want to help you. And I said, no, you don't. What do you mean you used to be homeless? I didn't believe it. And he said, yeah, I used to be homeless and someone helped me out. And they mentored me and gave me a book. And I want to give you the same book. I want to help you out because I want to pass it forward. And I had nothing to lose. And he said to me, go home, read the book I'm going to give you until you get the message. So I ran home, read the book 8 times without a break, didn't sleep, sprinted to the office with this unbelievable belief system I'd never had before. It really shifted me internally. And I saw my first clients, and my first clients were both blind. He was blind, she was blind, they had a guide dog. And I'm thinking, part of me was thinking, shit, how the hell am I going to sell them something like timeshare when they can't even see me? Right? So I'm going, what the hell? But because I had this new belief system, I said to them, you're going to sit there for 4 hours. You're going to spend 10 grand. You're going to give me a credit card. You're going to give me a big hug at the end of it and thank me for doing that with you. And they said, no, we're not. We're going to go. So anyway, they were there for 4 hours. At the end of it, he gave me his credit card. He said, right, put £10,000 in there. You were correct. We love it. Gave me a big hug. And I'm like, oh my God, because that was the first success I had in terms of a positive success that wasn't about survival. It was about abundance. And the first question I asked him was, why did you buy from me?
What did he say?
And he sat there and said, what, we're your first sale? I said, yes, you are my first sale. Couldn't believe it. And he said, the reason we bought from you is because we couldn't see you, but you transferred your belief to us and we love it. And that was the biggest pivotal lesson I had in my life, that I learned that you have to believe in yourself to get anything done in life. And after that, my life shifted from a negative into a positive.
What was the book, Marco? And the key learning from it from what you've said, was that massive mindset shift from scarcity and survival towards complete belief and understanding that I'm going to be a success.
The book was the right message at the right time, because I was in a point of desperation. And what I learned now was that the only 2 triggers in life that get you to take action are desperation and inspiration. Everything in between is a comfort zone, doesn't work. So I was very, very desperate to change. So because that was also the first book I'd ever read, and because it was recommended by the most successful man in my life, I fucking knew it was going to be good. You know what I mean? So I read the book, and the themes of the book were how to believe in yourself, the power of visualization, and the power of taking massive action to get what you want. And visualization was the key takeaway for me, because I had been visualizing all my life, but I didn't understand what it was. And when I understood that you can actually see what you want to be, you can actually see and manifest a reality, and then I started to act on it, things changed. So those were the key takeaways. The book was called Bring Out the Magic in Your Mind.
Would you recommend that to others, or do you think it was a case of circumstances?
I think it was both, but it's a very good book still. I mean, you can still get it. It was written in 1957 by a guy called Al Quran, who was the best magician in the world at the time. And he was the first magician to kind of guess what's in the envelope. He was known for that kind of magic. You know what I mean? But his book it's still a brilliant book. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly had an incredible impact on you. And the fact that you can categorize in your head on reflection and probably at that moment in time that this was a turning point in terms of going from survival and scraping past to abundance and selling? Because timeshares, like you, as many listeners will know, is incredibly lucrative for the salespeople when they do well at it, because although it's commission only, the commission percentages are great. And you had people and role models around you, this man that passed you this book that was living a successful life through it. How long did you stick at that? And did you start to see like quite quick success there after that?
Yeah, well, I decided to stick at it because I loved the community. I loved working with people that felt the same way as me. That was a very important part of my life because it's the first time I actually belonged somewhere. Before that, I didn't feel a sense of belonging anywhere. That was a very powerful thing for me. So I won Salesperson of the Month. I won Salesperson of the Year. I became the youngest sales manager the company ever had at 22 years old. I mean, I was managing people that were 50. Crazy, right? And when I got to 25, I got offered a lot of jobs all over the world doing the same thing because I came notorious in my industry. And one of the jobs that was offered to me was a job in Malaysia running a public company, actually running the public company with a business partner of mine. And that was a property company. We're doing very well in property, and they had 20 hotels and they wanted to create a timeshare membership opportunity. So we basically went over there, had a look, and then I decided to move my wife. We took my baby, who was 6 months old. We arrived there in 1997 in Malaysia, and it was like just amazing because everybody spoke English, the weather, 30 degrees every day. Technology was amazing, just a thriving Asian community. And actually, I dreamed of going to Asia and Far East when I was a kid. So this for me was like a dream come true. And I got the opportunity. But what happened is in 1997, you won't be old enough to remember this, but there was an Asian economic crisis caused by George Soros, where he destabilized all the currencies in Asia. And the company stopped selling property, literally stopped, because no one had the money anymore. So they said to me, Marco, we can't pay you. Do you want to stay or not? So I knew it was a great opportunity. I said, listen, let me stay. Let me innovate the product from a week's membership for $10,000 to a points membership where people can buy like a couple of days or 2 or 3 days for a couple of $1,000s every year. So I innovated that and took it to the market, and everyone started buying it. And I did nearly 2 billion in 3 years in that company, completely turned it around because I had a new product. I knew how to manage teams, and I had a blueprint and a system. That's how I did it.
It's that fight or flight moment again for you, though, isn't it? It's, Marco, either find a solution here or go home with your tail between your legs. Now, it wouldn't be of any fault of your own, would it? Because there are circumstances. But
it wouldn't have been no shame on me, and it wouldn't have been a negative thing. It would have been actually a positive thing. But because inside of me, I didn't want to be ordinary, and I knew, gut feeling, this was going to be huge. It just intuition told me to stay. And I'm so glad I did, because it became one of the best opportunities I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, of course. And I've heard you say before that there was a level of addiction to success. And it seems like this kind of age of 21, this massive turning point in terms of I can sell to people. And I know from working in sales that being a good salesperson makes you one of the most valuable people to any company, because without new business, you cannot survive. You cannot get your 6 to 10% growth that everyone talks about, Marco, year to year for companies in order to pay people more money. You can't just rely on your existing book. You need to bring in more. And you had that skill set and you were being remunerated for it. You were growing. There must have been such elation to have come up with this innovative approach to kind of fractional timeshares rather than the kind of longer term. Yeah. And you got growth. But you've said before that you were addicted to success, and that led you to an unhealthy place. What started to happen?
It did, because when you run a company at that level, the politics are endemic. Everybody wants your job, right? So I had to deal with a lot of politics, and because I had this fear of losing what I had because of where I'd been before. That really pushed me to working 18 hours a day, ridiculous hours, 7 days a week, because I felt I was always looking over my shoulder for the daggers in my back. And I wanted to keep protecting myself all the time. Like being homeless, I wanted to escape, I wanted to find survival, right? And after 3 years of doing that, I was giving a lecture in the office, in the sales office, and I literally collapsed of a mild heart attack. And I was taken to hospital, and they said to me, "You've got to slow down. You're bonkers. You've got to slow down." And it wasn't, I was never a drinker, never took drugs. It wasn't about that. It was just, I was just literally running on adrenaline. So I went to hospital, came out of hospital, and then reassessed my life because I knew I couldn't continue in doing what I was doing. Also, I had a couple of personal tragedies. I discovered my wife was having an affair with my best friend, which completely devastated me. Because I've known those people 10 years each. So for me, it was emotionally, I was fucked emotionally. And that took me a long time to overcome that. I think that was the biggest tragedy I had, because it was like a double betrayal of the two people I loved the most in my life. So suddenly they became strangers to me. And at the same time, I had about £3 million in the stock market. And the reason I had £3 million in the stock market is because I bought shares in a company that I was actually the CEO of, because they did a share offer to staff and said, "Listen, buy the shares, buy the shares." Of course, I got involved in that. And then the shares dropped from $3 to 10 cents a share. I was played completely. So I lost most of my money. So those three things happened to me in the year 2001. And what I decided to do was, I decided, number one, I wasn't going to have a boss ever again, no more. So I wasn't going to be giving my choice to somebody else. I wasn't going to help other people get their goals. I was going to help myself get my goals. And I said to myself, even if I have to eat food out of a trash bin, I'm going to not ever have a boss. And it was the best decision I ever made, because I was able to get small consultancy jobs around the world because of my reputation. Eventually, because I had two small children, I was very sad about the split, because I didn't have a dad and I wanted those guys to have a father. So I went back into the marriage. Now, it was great for the kids, but it wasn't good for me in the relationship because I was emotionally divorced. Once that happens, you can never go back. So anyway, I went back into the marriage, became an entrepreneur, struggled. And in 2008, I got divorced, which was one of the best days of my life, because I found myself again. Yeah, I have to put a positive on it, right? My wedding day was massive, but my divorce day was a bigger celebration, because I felt freedom for a long time, for the first time in a long time, because I didn't have to look after that marriage, didn't have to answer to her or get permission from her, because we were two different people. We just went in two different directions,
2001, a monumental year in your life because of these three particular events: one fiscal, one health related, and then one probably health and emotionally and the lifestyle related. Huge events. When you were speaking about the pressure on you as CEO and the daggers in your back and the need for survival, I wonder what element the kind of challenging childhood you would have had in that kind of mindset that you maybe had as well. Because
definitely.
Because you look back and you think, I'm somebody that's always had to fend for myself. I'm somebody that's always had to do it myself. I know now that you work really effectively as a coach, but at that point, you probably, there was a big driver on you to do it all yourself. Like, look at how self-made you are. You probably thought, well, I can't delegate to you, or I can't let you creep up on my position and my power. That's the immediate things that spring to my mind. And knowing that smile and that nod you've just given me, Marco, it's funny that sometimes when you hear somebody's story and you start to piece pieces together, you can see why your health was in such a position at just 31 when you're having like a cardiac arrest, basically.
Yeah, but it was partly that. It was partly that mindset, but also I've always been very good at reading people. And I knew I was around very bad people, because my boss business partner was great at first, but I was doing all the work. He was sitting back in England, taking the money. And eventually his plan was to get more money. So he actually got his wife to take my job. Right. So there was a shitload of politics there. And when people make a lot of money, they get greedier and greedier and think, how can I make more? And he was just a bad man. He was a nice guy, but then he just turned into a really bad guy. He became an alcoholic. And there's another story about that when I wrote my first book that he was connected to, where there was a personal attack on me online, a hate campaign, which I'll tell you about in a minute.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, there was a few things going on, but definitely what you were saying is true. I was in that mindset where I had to do everything myself, right? And I did have a problem with delegation, because no one was as good as me. So I thought, and the art of delegation is never do something yourself that someone else can do as well as or better than you, isn't it? That's the art of delegation.
Yeah. And when I hear you say that you went back into this emotionally broken and bankrupt marriage because of the betrayal that you've experienced,
yeah,
that speaks a lot to, again, the childhood experiences that you had where you grew up without a father, you grew up in an unstable environment, and one of your priorities was, regardless of the turmoil it would put you through, to stay in the same house again. You wanted to provide that. How did you manage, what was it, 7 years almost, living under the same roof still?
Yeah, it was very difficult because I just poured everything into the children. Fortunately, I was able to have a contract that was in Taiwan about 4 years into it. And I met a beautiful woman called Sherry, who I'm still friends with today. And we had an affair. And I think she kind of saved my life. She kind of made me feel wanted for the first time, because obviously when a betrayal happens, your self-esteem drops because you think you're not wanted anymore. So she made me feel really wanted. And we're still very close today. She got married, she got kids and everything. We were going to get married. It wasn't the right time. But she really saved me. And I think if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have been as healthy emotionally, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It almost surprises me that your health decline came right at that period, where I wondered, during the 7 years where you've got this marriage that's taken its toll on you, you've had this challenge with work and finances. I wondered whether you would pour yourself right into business and work thereafter it.
Oh, I did. I did. Yeah, I did. Because I didn't want to be around her much. So, I got as many jobs. I remember working 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. in a call center, managing a team of 20 people, selling broadband and phones to UK customers. And then I would go home, write for 2 hours, and then I would have a rest for an hour, and then I would start another job at 9 o'clock. That was literally crazy times,
Yeah, and the doctors asked you to slow down, Marco. They didn't tell you speed up.
Yeah, well, I had done for a few years, but then I kind of escalated it,
Yeah, you're somebody that responds well to pressure, albeit at times the body's going to break down. But you mentioned their writing, and of course you went on to write a best-selling book. What was that book about, and what was the process like for creating it?
So the book is called Close the Deal and Suddenly Grow Rich. And it was really my experience in sales and running a company and how to convert people into, buyers. And it was a rich, strategic book of psychology of sales, sales tactics, strategy, how to have the right, all that kind of creating a value proposition, everything like that. The process was, it started because my question was to myself, how can I get out of this marriage? So the answer came, write a best-selling book. So it sounds bizarre, but the book gave me focus, and it took me 6 months to write. I wrote for 2-3 hours a day. It took me 6 months to write the book. And then I found a publisher. It took me 3 months to edit the book. And then I was able to put it in actual physical bookstores, right? And then I was able to promote it, and I got on TV and on the press, and I had a reputation. So I'd already got a track record which matched the book. So it was congruent with my success, and it became a #1 bestseller within 2 weeks.
Years literally after selling, yeah. Given that you had so much expertise in closing deals, it's inevitable people would look to you for advice, but it's not inevitable that you'd be able to put that down on paper in a way that people would respond to. So I think that would sit up there as a big achievement of yours, particularly given we've just talked about your educational background, and then there you've gone on to write a book. Why do you think you were able to turn your hand to that and do it successfully, when if somebody looked at your CV and your track record, of course they could see this man has a lot to tell us about how to sell, how to close deals, the mindset, the visualization. Yeah. But how did you become strong enough to write that down?
Self-discipline, really, and a part of it was because I was unhappy at the time, and I really needed a creative outlet. I needed a creative outlet to have a sense of fulfillment, Colin, that actually I was doing something for myself rather than other people, because in that marriage I felt it was just for her. It wasn't for me, because, you know, we were just paying the bills. You know, she had a maid I had to pay for, private school, which wasn't necessary. You know, that was what it was. And I didn't feel that it was for me. So when I started writing the book, it was the first time in many years where I did something for myself, and there was a huge release of dopamine, which you know is the hormone that is triggered when you actually work for yourself and actually get something from it. You fulfill yourself with it because you've done it yourself. You worked on it. You get the same feeling when you go and work out in the gym. You know, you do that because every time I see you, you're in the freaking gym. So you got a lot of dopamine going on there, bro. You know what I mean?
We need it, don't we? And we need really, I would call it like clean forms of dopamine. So that reward that you're getting from producing something really positive that can help other people, but obviously is going to radically change your situation by releasing a book that's selling thousands upon thousands of copies. Training in the gym, you're bettering yourself again, you're proving yourself, you're really strong. And we spoke about on this latest conversation, we actually get dopamine from our phone screens and notifications and gratification online, but it's a very different form.
Toxic. Yeah, which is toxic. Yeah.
It's a very, very different form, and channeling where we get our dopamine from and using it at set points to elevate us in the positive way is something that I can identify as a thread throughout your life as well, because you've managed to use it to give you that boost during this difficult period where you're in a loveless marriage in order to give your kids the best possible upbringing.
Yeah, it was like I actually learned to be selfish in a good way, because I'd always been so generous with other people and a people pleaser a lot of the time. But I read a few books and I studied psychology, and I thought, right, you know what? I need to love myself first. The airplane mask syndrome, put the mask on you and then put it on the other person, right? So I decided to shift that mindset. And when I shifted that, I started writing the book, and my life just became fantastic.
Yeah. What happened after this then, Marco? Because there's so much more to your story. You were out in Malaysia. You generated.
So what happened is I wrote the book. It became really successful. But if you're an author, you know you don't make money writing books. Really, you don't make a lot because they don't cost very much, and you have to sell millions of them, right? So my next question was, how can I make $1 million this year? Now I've written this book. And it was the subprime crisis in 2008. So there's a huge financial crisis. You remember that, right, Colin?
Yeah.
You know, everything just went through the floor. It was just crazy, right? So I had an idea. And my idea was to ask hotels, because I had relationships with them, if they could give me some free rooms, and I could package them into a voucher and call it a vacation incentive voucher and sell it to companies as an incentive for their customers to buy their product. So buy a car, get a free 7-day holiday. Buy a phone, get a free 3-day mini break. So I packaged them down, and the condition was that companies had to buy a minimum of 500, and I would charge $50 for each one. So like one deal was 25 grand. And it was purely as an instinct. And I went out and basically got the voucher, packaged it all up, and I got my first sale for 25 grand. And I'm going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
What was the dopamine like on that?
Say that again, sorry?
What was the dopamine like on that hit?
That was a huge hit, because on Christmas Eve in 2008, I got a $500,000 deal closed on Christmas Eve. And I got a check for 250 grand in deposit. And I was like, oh my God, that was crazy, right, at the time. And I remember the printer had 7 days to make it. And I was through those holidays, we were packing 10,000 vouchers in these boxes to send to this customer who owned 100 retail stores. So it was like Curry's in Malaysia. And the incentive was they had a new 4K TV and they wanted to sell more TV. So buy a TV, get a free holiday. So they bought my incentive. So that really kick-started that business. And we did 12 million in 18 months in that business.
Yeah, it's incredible that you spotted that. And the opportunism during, like you say, that 2008 crash where hotels would have been desperate to rent rooms. Yeah. And of course, if you're bundling up, the people that are going to the hotel are going to spend money on food. They're going to spend money on drink.
Exactly.
Where they can make their money back. The room itself is just the entry point to the finances. And your understanding of that meant that they were able to give you a little bit for very little or nothing. And then you generate the value further down the line with another client, which is the retailer who's selling the TVs or the cars or whatever they're selling. So no, I love that. And you have such an entrepreneurial mind, and it just keeps getting demonstrated down and down the line.
Yeah, and it's like whenever there's a crisis, for me there's a huge opportunity to be capitalized on.
You're out in Malaysia, and you end up getting knighted, Marco. What happened there?
Well, not something that happens every day, right? So what happened was one of my things I wanted always to do was open my own restaurant. So I opened my own restaurant and I called it Naked Restaurant. And it was like a spin that the food was fresh, organic. It wasn't everyone was unclothed. But he brought a shitload of people to the restaurant because it was in a Muslim country. So it was like controversial, right? And as soon as I opened that restaurant, I met all the celebrities. Everyone came. It was like a place to be. And one day a filmmaker approached me and said, Marco, do you realize there are 350,000 blind people in Malaysia that are not allowed to have a guide dog or even take it to public places? And I thought he was joking. I said, what? He said, yeah. So I did my own research and found out it was true. And blind people had to basically wait for a family member to take them out of the house to go even shopping. So they were virtually imprisoned in their own houses. And I go, whoa, what a tragedy that is. So I asked a question, said, right, how can I make an impact? How can I help these people? Because no one else was helping. So the answer came to me, said, make a short film, call the film, Are You Blind? And then get a guide dog. I had to buy a guide dog from China and import it. It cost me 15 grand. And then we filmed this blind man with the guide dog all over Kuala Lumpur, going into shopping malls, restaurants, public transport, being refused entry everywhere because the Muslim culture had a stigma towards dogs. They thought they were not intelligent, filthy, all that kind of stuff, which is the wrong impression because actually guide dogs are very, very intelligent. They can hold the bladder for 6 hours. They're trained. Amazing creatures. So we did this film. We made the film. It was 20 minutes long. We put it on Facebook, and within a week, we had 15 million views. Because the blind community in the world were outraged by what they were seeing. They could not believe what they were seeing in this day and age. Wow. And then the Malaysian government contacted me and said, Marco, you're responsible for making this film. And I thought I was in trouble. I said, well, yes, I am. And they said, well, we had no idea that this was a problem. And we're very embarrassed. You've embarrassed us massively. So we've decided to do something about it. First of all, we're going to change the laws to make it legal for blind people to own guide dogs and take them anywhere. And then all the shopping mall managers called me, said, so sorry. We're going to let them in now, no problem. And then the royal family contacted me saying, listen, we'd like to honor you for your work. And they knighted me.
Yeah. And the key thing you said there was that you kind of publicly embarrassed them into making a change, because you could have written a petition and they would have said, okay, very good. But because you brought the eyes of the world onto their country, and they're quite a proud nation, the Malaysians as well. So when you expose an element of weakness within there, they had to act. And of course, the level of celebrity and how would I put it, like awareness of you as the head of that, inevitably, hopefully, they were always going to recognize you for that as well. But I know that there was elements of them being a bit tetchy with you because of you exposing them in the first place.
Yeah, and through that process, I learned that you can change things, that one person can change a political view, agenda. They can change laws, rules. You know, if there's a critical enough mass of people, then things change.
Yeah, exactly that. There's a few other areas that we need to cover, Marco, during the time that we've got together. And one of those has got to relate to your interest in property and how that led to you almost righting the wrongs that you had in your childhood when it came to having a roof over your head. Can you tell me a little bit around how you ended up with such a property empire and then leading down the line to your Channel 4 show?
Yeah, well, I got into property really late. You know, I was like, when I got my company that was really kicking ass, I thought, right, I need to invest this. So I just did it for fun, really. I started buying properties in America for like 20, 30 grand because it was so cheap to buy them for fun. And I'd renovate them and sell them. And I got so good at doing that I decided to make it into a business and teach people how to do it. And I wrote another #1 best-selling book about it as well in 2016. And then Channel 4 TV approached me and said, listen, Marco, we'd love to make a TV show with you called Get a House for Free to address the social housing issue in the country where a lot of people cannot afford to even buy the first property because they need a huge deposit, 20%, and they can't even find it. It would take them 10 years to save it, and they still wouldn't be able to afford it. And we want to make a TV show where you could give a house to a homeless family, pay the mortgage off to demonstrate there is kindness in the world. And, rich people can help people that are less fortunate. So I said, yeah, didn't hesitate, would love to do it. So in 2017, we made that TV show. There were 25,000 applicants for the house because they did a campaign for it. And then the hardest job was going through the thousands of applicants to get down to 10 people, families, that were the finalists that really needed it the most. And we filmed all that. And to cut a long story short, we got down to three families, basically. One was a young lady that was 23 that had a 2-year-old daughter that reminded me of my mum and me when she was on the doorstep and refused to live there. There was a Syrian family that were refugees that hadn't got asylum yet, that had been in England for 10 years, that paid $20,000 to human traffickers to leave Syria. And they had to leave the mum behind because they didn't have enough money. And they lived on £35 a week for 10 years. And when I met them, they were living under a bridge. And they were the most decent people I've ever met because they were well-dressed. They used to go to the library every day and study for the PhD. And then go home at 4, go to the shopping mall because they had nowhere to live. No money to eat, go to the soup kitchen, then go to the bridge. Can you imagine?
Yeah, harrowing.
And then there was a blind, 90% blind lady called Jo, who worked for the emergency services, but she never had enough money to buy her own house. And she was an amazing lady, still is. So I decided to give a house to each of those families.
How did it feel to go full circle from the child who was in the arms of your mother, turned away, sleeping in parks, 50 different schools, unsettled, hiding under the bed in a home that was deeply troubled, to get to a stage where you were able to give back? Because you've spoken during this conversation about having to flip to being more selfish. And of course, there was times when you were selfless and you helped the blind in Malaysia, but then you've come back to the UK and you're able to be selfless again. How did that feel?
It was the most amazing feeling, because I'll tell you the feeling. On the last day of filming, I was going to give the house away to the young lady who was 23 with a 2-year-old daughter. And we were due to film it. And I was literally overcome with flu. My eyes started watering. My nose started running. I couldn't hardly speak, right? And I managed to tell production that, listen, I'm not feeling well. We're going to have to cancel the filming. And then I saw this stranger walking in the garden, a woman walking in the garden. And I said to production, who is that person? And they said, well, that's the psychologist. I said, psychologist? What's she doing here? They said, she's here to counsel the person you're going to give the house to, because she won't be able to cope with it emotionally. And I said, no shit. They said, yes, shit. And this psychologist approached me and said to me, Marco, you don't have flu. You're having a reaction to an unresolved childhood issue. And I didn't immediately receive that. But seconds later, my flu stopped. My eyes stopped watering and I could suddenly speak again. And I went in the house and gave the house away to her. And I cried for a month nonstop, because I've not cried since I was about 8. So that was a journey of completion for me. And I realized, because I do believe in God, and I realized that was the reason I was there. My purpose was clear to me then. On that day, I was there to inspire the less fortunate and inspire kindness throughout the world. And that was a huge emotional impact to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible how our emotions and our trauma manifests itself physically, and it did with you. The other area that I wanted to ask around when it came to the Channel 4 show was, unbelievably, you got criticism for giving away those houses. How did you deal with that? Like, and you're not shy of dealing with online challenges. You've told me this
Yeah.
before.
I expected it, because whatever you do, if you're successful in doing it, you're going to have a lot of jealousy. And it's always the people beneath you that go and hate on you, because they want what you've done. They want to be who you are in certain ways. And they know that they don't have the courage to do that. So they project what they don't have onto you and say, that's not fair. Therefore, they try and bring you down. So when I understood that, I realized that if you don't have any haters, you don't have any success.
Yeah.
So you've got to continue pissing people off. Otherwise, you're not successful.
Yeah, you've certainly embraced that, Marco, and you do have a strong, abrasive personality when it comes to dealing with that challenge. And I think it served you well because of the hardened shell that you've had to build at times in order to deal with that. But anyone that's listened to this latest episode will know that that hardened shell isn't always present, and there are obviously times when
not at all. No, inside I'm very fluffy. Love is the most amazing thing, isn't it? And yeah, on that Slater's interview, I shared that I resorted to antidepressants because I met someone in lockdown and thought she was the one. And we spent a lot of time together. It didn't work out. She left, and that was devastating for me. So, and because I was on my own, I didn't have any family around me. I felt very lonely. And I rang the doctor and said, listen, I don't want this feeling anymore. Can you help me? And I didn't want to do it, but I was in so much pain that I took antidepressants for 3 months.
Yeah. And
it actually helped me because it numbed. All it does is just numb that feeling. And then I came off them naturally. And I did actually take antidepressants before I got divorced. So in the last 6 months of the marriage, I took antidepressants. But when I left her, a month after, I just stopped taking them automatically because I felt so happy. So I'm not knocking antidepressants. I think sometimes they're necessary.
I think your experience with them, Marco, is one of the experiences that gives people who would ever want to use antidepressants some reassurance that they can help you level out chemically for a period until you are ready to put yourself in a different position.
Yeah, because it boosts your serotonin levels. So for me, I'm actually not against medication. Sometimes you need it. And, sometimes it can prevent suicide. It can prevent tragedy. So for me, I'm going to say, okay, I am for that when it's necessary, but I don't take them every day. I've only taken them twice in my life, and it helped me at that time. So,
Yeah, selective use and application. And I know now that you look after yourself in so many other ways that it would take a traumatic event like that, such as somebody that you thought was the one. I know you said this before, and then the drop off from that means that, God, I need something to support me through this. And now look at you where you're channeling your energy into other areas. And one of those areas, and we've got time to squeeze it in, Marco, is Legacy of Lies. And look at that smile on your face. There we go. What is Legacy of Lies, and why do the listeners need to hear about it?
Well, I'd always wanted to make a film or films since I was a kid, because as I said, I was the guy at the back of the room looking at the window, pretending to be in films as James Bond. That was my escape, right? And I kind of put it to the side because I became so busy and successful. I kind of became the victim of my own success because I never got time to make that film. And when I got to 45, I'd accomplished a lot of things. I didn't need to work anymore. So I thought, right, let's make this film. So I drew a line in the sand, and I said, right, I knew what kind of film I wanted to make, kind of an action thriller. And I reached out to people that I knew. And I met someone on Facebook that I'd known a few years, and we wrote a script together, and I gave her 25 grand and she ran away with the money, never saw her again, right? So it was a bad experience initially, but I wanted to make the film, right? Didn't do my research properly. But I met someone in that process called Victor Sole, who was a Spanish actor who was a friend of Adrian Ball, who was director of Legacy of Lies. And he was based in Holland, so I went over to meet him. We got on really well. And he had a story that was based on a true story of how the Russians bombed a building in Kiev in Ukraine and killed 300 people, and because his wife lost someone in that tragedy. And it was called Truth 99 because it happened in 1999. So we wrote the script, got loads of PR, put 50 grand into it. And the next 6 months later, what happened is Adrian called me and said, listen, Marco, he's sitting down. I said, why? What's up? He said, listen, set the book down right now. He said, you are on Russian TV. Your face is all over it. Your Facebook's over it. Your Instagram's over it. And they're saying on the news that you are crazy for making this film. You're going to get killed because you're exposing Putin for doing this shit, right? And I didn't believe it again. So I got the newsreel sent over, had it translated to English, and it was worse than what I thought because they circled all my comments in red circles, right? And it's the first time I've ever been scared of losing my life, Colin, ever in my life. It was a surreal experience. And at the same time this was happening, I'd been chatting to a very, very beautiful woman who happened to be Russian, but didn't connect to at first. And one day she said, can I come and stay with you? And I was still living in Malaysia. She said, yeah, come over. So she flew over to see me, stay with me. And on the third day in bed, she says, Marco, I don't think you should make that film. And I said, why would you say that? She said, because I am not your girlfriend. I'm a Russian FSB agent. I've been sent to spy on you. Your house is bugged. Your office is bugged. And I'm like, not fucking believing what was going on, Colin, at the time, right? And I sell weapons. My best-selling weapon is cyanide. And here's a picture of me and Putin because he's my cousin. Can you imagine what was going on in my mind?
You were in the Viper's nest. You were about to get Novichoked.
Yeah, I was, because listen, I was trapped in my own apartment. You know, I couldn't go to sleep because I thought she brought a carbon fiber gun and going to shoot me or something like that, or put cyanide in my tea, you know. And that was a hugely wow moment. And I had my office checked, and there were bugs all over the place, so it was legitimate. And then I did, you know, I thought about it for a couple of days, and she was still with me, and thought, well, I told her, I said, listen, if you want to fucking kill me, just kill me. I don't care. I've had a great life. Knock yourself out. Do what you want to do. But you know what? It's not going to put a good light on the Russians, right? So that was probably the best sex I ever had in that last 10 days of my life because the stakes were so high, right? So anyway, she left. And then we said, we stopped making the film because it was too dangerous, you know. And then 6 months went by, and me and Adrian said, why don't we just make a fictional spy thriller loosely based on that story, call it Legacy of Lies. And we scraped £12,000 together. We made a trailer, and then we sent it to various film foundations and grant organizations for films. And the Ukrainian State Film Agency, we won the competition. We won a $1 million fund to make the film. So yeah, right? So but the condition was it wasn't all cash. There was some cash, and there was some, like, you know, tax incentives, crew, that kind of stuff. So the condition was we had to find an A-list actor in order to finish the film or to get the fund. So we had to really search high and low. We asked Bruce Willis, Schwarzenegger, all the big stars, and they were like £10 million each. But even if you could find the money, they were busy for 5 years. So eventually we found Scott Adkins, who dropped out of the film, read our script, said he loved it, wanted to make it. And then we had to find 250 grand to put in escrow before he would commit. And we managed to scrape that money together. We got him to sign the contract, and then we attracted another $1 million in investment. We started filming in Kiev in May 2019, the film. And then halfway through the filming, we ran out of money. So we thought, right, what the fuck are we going to do now? So we went to Cannes. We borrowed a friend of a friend's yacht, went to Cannes, cut a new trailer, and we did something called pre-sales, where you can actually sell geographical rights of the film to different countries in the world where they buy licensing rights. So we sold 6 regions for $300,000 each on that boat, flew back, finished the film, finished the post-production in December 2020, and then the fucking virus came.
I was about to say, Marco, this sounds a lot like your fractional timeshares approach, though. I think you've reused your idea there.
The virus came, and we couldn't put it in cinemas. And we had 10,000 cinemas signed up, and we couldn't put it in the cinemas. Now, the good thing is that we had already got the money back to make the film in the pre-sale. So it wasn't that we had lost money. It's just that we'd lost an opportunity to make money. So we held the film back. Hang on a second. I'm just delaying a call for this
Yes, no problem, Marco. We'll let you wrap up.
So yeah, we held it back, and then we managed to hold it back for a year, and then Netflix got interested in the film, and they bought the UK rights, and it went to number 4 in the UK.
It was incredible. I loved it because when we met at Slater's in August, I watched it that Saturday night when I was trying to unwind after a busy week, and it was incredible. And obviously, I shared it in my story, shouted out. And Scott Adkins was brilliant. You were in the film as well, which is always it was funny to see you on the screen as well. But it was a really gripping film. And the headline that comes off the back of this is obviously number 4 in the UK. But just 3 weeks ago, you wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and you've got a message from your friend, and that causes you to be violently sick and cry. What did that message say?
The message said, Marco, do you realize that your film, Legacy of Lies, has debuted on Netflix in the USA at number 2? Showed me the picture. And I'm like, holy fuck. Didn't believe it again. Researched it. And when I found out the truth, I literally burst out crying. It was the most joyful moment in my life. It wasn't the same feeling as the Channel 4 show because it was for me. It was for me that I'd done something on my own and got to that level of success of my ultimate dream from a child, which was to make a film.
And the fact that it came from such a challenging circumstance, and we're thinking back to this thread throughout life where you were successful in your sales career despite the number of challenges you had, being so shy, being introverted, and not having confidence. You went out to Malaysia and it almost failed, but you adapted and you changed. The pandemic hits when you finally made this film after all the different challenges to make it in the way that you wanted to, the fundraising, the acquiring of Scott Adkins as the actor, despite all the different challenges. And ultimately you've come out on top with probably a better result from the outside looking in with Netflix in the UK and the US than you could have hoped for if it had gone into all these cinemas?
Yeah, I think on reflection, we had a better ending, although it took a lot longer because the investors were going fucking nuts because they couldn't get the money back as make the profit. But in the end, the way that we did it, and because of Scott's influence, and I marketed the shit out of that film, Colin. Literally, I marketed the shit out of it. And we had no marketing budget. It was all me doing all the marketing, right? And, because of that, because of my experience in marketing, I was able to really help that film get showcased on that level.
Yeah, just an incredible highlight. And the fact that you say that was one of the best moments of your life and the feeling that it gave you, kind of fulfilling that childhood dream of, I've created a film, it's out there, it's in the world, and you're proud of it. It surprises me that ranks up there so high when you consider everything else combined, but it shows that there was something internal that you needed to do that.
It was a purely boyhood internal dream. It was a dream come true, a literal. If I could have anything in the world, if I rubbed the lamp and the genie came out, you've got 3 wishes. What would be the first wish? To be star in my own feature film about spies. That would be number 1.
Yeah, you were dreaming of being James Bond, and you were a spy, and that's ticked that box.
I got my wish because the Channel 4 thing wasn't really. I didn't even dream of that. That wasn't something that was a goal of mine. Do you know what I mean, Colin? But that film was so, and it was a goal for many, many years. And that's, I think, why it was so emotional for me. It was literally, I've never felt anything like it. I just kept fucking crying and throwing up.
You just kind of last little bit before we wrap up, Marco. You cry more now since you've accepted that you cry. Why do you think that is?
Because I thought crying was a sign of weakness. And my family conditioning was you don't show your emotions, you don't hug each other, there's no crying, right? You don't be vulnerable because if you show your vulnerability, you get exploited. So that was an enculturation program that was completely dysfunctional, that did not serve me at all. So when I learned to break that habit loop, my life completely changed.
Yeah, and you appear genuinely much happier now. And whenever we speak, you're a ball of very determined, positive energy. And I don't think you've always been like that because
No.
of the conditioning that you had prior to that.
Yeah, no.
That's powerful, Marco. And I have loved the conversation. I knew going through your story piece by piece, learning the anecdotes, learning the feelings and the thoughts behind it was something that I was, from a selfish perspective, really going to value and enjoy. But I know my audience will have as well. Where's the best place for them to head towards if they want to continue the conversation with you?
Go to my Instagram, Marco Robinson now. I've got a blue verification tick so you know it's me, and I'll reply to any DM.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for listening, guys. If you've enjoyed this one, which I no doubt you have, I want you to do two things. The first of those is take a screenshot, tag me at call.cambro, tag Marco at Marco Robinson now. And the second thing I want you to do is to share it with a friend. Copy and paste the link, send it direct to their WhatsApp. They need to hear this story, and I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.